Hi folks. Perhaps the most misunderstood and demagogued issue in the Commonwealth relates to how our state taxes the natural gas industry, particularly deposits found in the Marcellus Shale region. I will try to highlight the facts of this complicated subject so that you have all the details necessary to arrive at a just conclusion. If you follow the news media, you might think that the Marcellus Shale industry doesn't pay any taxes. This couldn't be further from the truth. But that's exactly what some people want you to think. One of the people who's been working overtime to confuse you is our new governor. His renewed push to create what he calls a severance tax perpetuates a half-truth. In the world you and I grew up in, a half-truth is understood to be a lie. That's because it's designed to deceive you by leaving out important facts. Too often in politics, though, a half-truth is considered the truth. People take a small kernel of truth and surround it by falsehoods. Half-truths are far more dangerous than outright lies because that one small particle of truth makes the rest seductive. In this case, the half-truth you're being told is that Pennsylvania is the only state that doesn't assess a severance tax on the natural gas industry, and therefore the industry isn't paying its so-called fair share. No, we don't have a severance tax. We do have, however, an impact fee, something that no other state has. This fee generates about $220 million per year and was crafted to keep Pennsylvania competitive so that we can grow the industry and increase revenue for our local communities. Most citizens are unaware of this fee. Additionally, the industry pays every other tax we have in Pennsylvania, such as corporate, personal income, sales and use, and liquid fuels taxes. All told, these taxes have generated more than $2.1 billion for the Commonwealth since 2008. I'll bet you hadn't heard that. So the fact is that our natural gas industry is not only taxed like all other industries, but it also is specifically targeted by the impact fee. The strength of the current approach is that the funds raised from the impact fee mostly remain in the areas directly impacted by drilling, though a remainder is distributed to all 67 counties. By contrast, the governor's proposed severance tax would take most of that money away from local communities and channel the lion's share of it to the general fund. This would subject those dollars to political whims, much like the old casino money that was peddled as a panacea to our spending problems some years ago. Funds should stay in the communities that are impacted by drilling. A fallacy in the governor's logic is that when comparing tax environments, you must compare tax structures on a state-by-state basis. Some states that levy a severance tax do not have a state income tax, while others assess much lower corporate income taxes. Pennsylvania has a state income tax, and not only that, we are home to the second highest corporate income tax in the nation, 9.9%. There are other taxes that could be mentioned, but the point is you must evaluate the overall tax picture when discussing what the governor calls fairness. There are other serious problems with the governor's numbers. He claimed his 5% severance tax would generate $1 billion to fund education. In reality, his plan would result in a much smaller amount for education, only about $150 million. While his tax scheme would raise about $416 million in total, still well below the $1 billion promised, this governor would siphon off most of these dollars to fund projects and initiatives that have nothing to do with education. Perhaps the most egregious example is that he would use Marcellus dollars to subsidize new wind and solar power initiatives. It would also be used to pay back $675 million in borrowing that occurred to fund wind and solar programs. This is not entirely unlike what happened at the federal level, where taxpayers lost hundreds of millions of dollars when fly-by-night but well-connected companies like Solyndra went belly up. Worse, it is a slap in the face to the natural gas industry itself because it forces them to underwrite the industry's competitors with tax dollars, an industry that's never asked for a single dime of your tax money. I want you to know that the current impact fee works for Pennsylvania. Marcellus drillers so far have contributed over $830 million in impact fees, $35 billion in capital investments, and in excess of $5 billion in royalties to local landowners. As of 2012, the industry employed more than 60,000 people with accompanying wages over $5 billion. Those jobs average over $80,000 a year and generate a sizable amount of personal income tax, PIT. Remember that PIT accounts for 41% of state revenues. Often overlooked, the industry contributed nearly $300 million in property taxes to local governments, helping fund important projects in the communities we live. While to some taxing success intuitively seems correct, it is in fact a job-killing economic policy. Throughout the recent recession, the jobs created from the Marcellus Shale industry accounted for 90% of the new jobs in our state. Some 240,000 direct and indirect jobs helped reduce our unemployment rate from 8.2% just a few years ago to a low of 5.1%. Without those jobs, our economy would be even in worse condition. More workers mean more revenues for the state and more money in the pockets of Pennsylvanians. The jobs created from natural gas stretch far beyond actual drilling. A small specialty company in my district grew from a 2-employee operation to a 52-worker operation, all due to Marcellus Shale. Procter & Gamble has a wonderful success story worth retelling. The soap giant considered moving its operation out of Pennsylvania to Georgia until realizing that the low-cost natural gas under its own property could help power its factory of 2,400 employees and lower costs. It ultimately expanded part of its Georgia operation here in Pennsylvania, adding another 300 jobs. I recently attended a forum in western Pennsylvania where local businesses relayed their success stories of growth and job creation. Durabond, a Pennsylvania company, added 150 jobs and renovated an old steel plant that had been closed. Another representative of a company making high-pressure vessels in McKeesport discussed the growth in its business, mostly due to Marcellus Shale. Even ancillary businesses like Vet Taxi talked about the savings to its business from converting its taxis to natural gas. The list goes on and on. At that same forum, a representative from UPS discussed converting its fleet to natural gas. Put this into perspective. UPS is our state's third largest employer with 16,000 employees who handle 18 million packages a day and log 2.3 billion road miles while consuming 324 million gallons of diesel fuel. Imagine the benefit to the environment and our economy if they were consuming natural gas instead. The company could realize great fuel cost savings, but there is considerable upfront investment required. Natural gas also affects industries in steel, glass, metals, petrochemicals, and pharmaceuticals, just to name a few. Right now, Pennsylvania supplies about 20% of the U.S. demand for natural gas. We are poised to drive that figure much higher. Our hope is to continue expanding the demand for Pennsylvania natural gas, attracting manufacturing and other businesses to the Commonwealth. We do not want to drive this important industry away through oppressive taxes like those proposed by the governor. That raises another important point. Severance tax proponents like to support their tax grab by mockingly saying, "Where will the drillers go? The shale isn't going anywhere." That sounds like a clever talking point, but the truth is that there are nearly 20 shale deposits across North America, even more worldwide. Corporations compete globally and will invest in the areas that provide the greatest return. We want to keep the natural gas industry competitive by lowering risk and providing certainty in the tax structure to draw maximum investment to our state. Most people are unaware that drilling requires great investment at considerable risk. Think of every well as a nearly $7 million construction project, boosting a local economy while adding revenue to neighboring municipal coffers and businesses in various ways. Uncertainty and tight economics have reduced the drilling rig count in Pennsylvania from 130 in 2012 to around 50 today. Taxes discourage investment. A single drilling company I know invested over $800 million in Pennsylvania last year and was considering a larger investment this year, but has suspended that investment because of the uncertainty of the severance tax. The Commonwealth stands to lose billions of dollars in investment that would otherwise boost our economy and create jobs that generate sales and income tax dollars for the state. We know that what you tax, you get less of. Quite simply, the governor's proposal of instituting a severance tax in hopes of generating revenue for the state's general fund is bad economic policy. Our budget woes are rooted in overspending. A bloated state pension system and automatic pay increases negotiated in state contracts are at the heart of our deficit. If we follow through with business incentives, subsequent budgets will sustain themselves through an expanding economy, generating solid growth, buttressed by clean energy and well-paying jobs. We intend to continue moving Pennsylvania forward to make our state the nation and world's energy leader. All Pennsylvanians benefit from this industry. Wounding or killing it in its infancy demonstrates poor economic understanding and serves nothing except short-term political interests. I hope you will join me by saying no to the governor's proposal to institute a severance tax. Until next time, God bless.